Your words are not harmless, they are blueprints. Every I am you speak is building your reality, your relationships, your future. But here's the catch: most of us are living inside identities we never chose, scripts written by fear, culture, and other people's voices. What if you could rewrite them? What if you could tune into the piece that contradicts logic, step out in obedience, and live in rhythm with truth? This video isn't just about affirmations, it's about transformation. Stay with me, and you'll learn how to move from noise to communion and finally walk in the life your heart already knows is yours. Before the world becomes visible, it becomes verbal. Every civilization has known this truth. Genesis says, "Let there be," and there was. The Vedas describe creation emerging from sacred sound. Science now tells us the universe itself hums at a background frequency, a song of existence woven into space-time. And yet the deepest proof of this law is not out there in galaxies or scriptures. It's in you. Every day you are declaring realities into motion, some small, some life-altering, not because you sit in temples or write affirmations in journals, but because every word you speak is an instruction to your world. You say, "I am tired," and your body responds with heaviness. You mutter, "I never catch a break," and your brain begins scanning for evidence to agree. Words are not ornaments, they are operating systems. They do not simply describe who you are, they install who you become. The tragedy is that most people speak as reporters of their circumstances instead of authors of their identity. They narrate their wounds, recite their scarcity, and rehearse their fears, thinking they are only describing reality. In truth, they are prescribing it. The subconscious does not parse sarcasm, tone, or intention. It hears your words as law. It hears "I can't handle this" and rewires your nervous system to collapse earlier next time. It hears "I am unlovable" and it filters relationships through rejection. What you call venting, your biology calls programming. This is why every sacred tradition places reverence on the tongue. Proverbs declared that life and death are in its power. Mystics warned that curses are not spells but careless sentences spoken over self. Neuroscience now confirms that repeated self-descriptions lay down neural highways, grooves in the brain, where traffic of thought flows automatically. Once those highways are built, you don't need enemies outside of you. You become your own reinforcement loop. But here is the liberating counterpoint. The same mouth that repeated old limits can plant new blueprints. Every I am is a seed, and seeds do not ask for proof before they sprout. They respond to nurture. When you say "I am learning," your brain opens curiosity circuits. When you say "I am capable," your prefrontal cortex lights up with problem-solving pathways. When you say "I am ready," your nervous system primes for opportunity. Your body does not wait for external evidence. It obeys your internal declaration. Think of it this way. Words are the architects of identity. Identity is the construction plan of behavior. Behavior builds the house you live in. Relationships, health, finances, habits. If you don't like the house, don't start by rearranging the furniture. Change the blueprint. And the blueprint always begins with language. This is why repetition matters. Not the shallow repetition of empty affirmations, but the sacred repetition of identity statements. The difference is subtle but decisive. Empty affirmations try to argue with reality. I am rich, while the bank account screams otherwise. Identity statements root themselves in becoming I am learning how to create wealth. I am opening to abundance. I am stewarding resources wisely. These aren't delusions, they are directions. They give your subconscious a command it can follow without contradiction. You already live inside the gravity of words you once repeated unconsciously. Perhaps a parent told you, "You're difficult," and you unknowingly grew into that costume. Maybe classmates said, "You're slow," and your nervous system wore that label into adulthood. None of these declarations were destiny. They were drafts, and drafts can be edited. You are not sentenced to keep speaking what was once spoken over you. You are the author now. Pause for a moment and notice the words that most often leave your lips. Track your defaults. Do they reinforce the person you want to become, or recycle the person you no longer wish to be? Do they align with possibility, or do they echo old pain? Awareness is the first act of authorship. You cannot rewrite what you refuse to recognize. Once you see it, the work is not to shame yourself for careless words, but to reorient. Every slip into an old phrase is not failure, it is invitation. Each time you catch, "I'm always late leaving your mouth," you get to upgrade it. "I'm learning to respect my time." Each time you say, "I'm terrible at relationships," you get to pivot. "I'm growing in love and connection." The tongue does not demand perfection, it demands direction. And here's the profound truth: direction compounds. Just as negative words build momentum into cycles of despair, new words build momentum into cycles of transformation. Speak new seeds daily, and in time, they grow roots in your subconscious. Your behavior starts to match without strain. Your environment starts to shift without forcing. The world bends not because you begged, but because you spoke with authority. Let this sink in. Your voice is not small. Your words are not background noise in the theater of the universe. They are the script. When you finally honor that truth, you stop narrating life as a victim of circumstance. You start declaring life as a participant in creation. So today, remember, the most important sentences you'll ever speak are not to others. They are to yourself. They are not measured in volume, but in vibration. They are not bound by the past, but by the identity you dare to declare. From this point forward, do not simply talk, author. Do not merely describe, direct. For the world does not respond to what you wish. It responds to what you declare. Your brain is not a passive witness to life. It is an architect taking notes on every phrase you utter and every thought you repeat. Neuroscientists call this process neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience, belief, and repetition. Each I am you speak is not just sound in the air, it is scaffolding in your nervous system. With every declaration, you are laying down pathways that become easier to travel tomorrow than they were today. This is how identity hardens into habit, and habit hardens into destiny. Consider this when you say, "I am overwhelmed." Your brain doesn't shrug and ask if you really mean it. It takes you at your word. Stress circuits fire. Cortisol levels rise. Your body prepares for fight or flight. When you repeat this phrase day after day, the brain strengthens those neural connections, making overwhelm your default state. In the same way, when you say, "I am learning," new circuits of curiosity and openness light up. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation and possibility, flows into your system, making growth feel more natural. Your nervous system is obedient. It does not debate, it builds. This is why two people can face the same challenge and yet live two different realities. One says, "I can't handle this," and their mind shuts down, looking for escape. The other says, "I am resourceful," and their mind begins scanning for solutions. The event was the same, but the declaration shaped the outcome. Your words are not commentary, they are instructions. Science offers us countless examples. Stroke patients who affirm, "I am healing, I am regaining strength," show faster recovery than those who focus solely on physical therapy tasks. Children, labeled as bright, begin to test higher, not because of innate genius, but because their identity as capable rewires how their brain approaches problems. Even placebo studies demonstrate that when patients declare belief in healing, their bodies release chemistry that mimics real medication. The line between biology and belief is thinner than we think. But here is the subtlety: the brain listens to repetition and emotion. Words alone, spoken without conviction, rarely move the needle. You can say, "I am confident" 50 times, but if your tone trembles with doubt, your subconscious hears the doubt, not the declaration. The nervous system responds to coherence. Thought and feeling must align. This is why empty affirmations feel hollow, but authentic declarations rooted in even the smallest flicker of belief feel electric. The brain is also a filter. Inside it lives the reticular activating system, RAS, a network that determines what information to notice and what to ignore. You tell it what to look for through your words. Say, "I am unlucky," and your RAS scans for evidence of failure, amplifying every setback and overlooking every win. Say, I am favored, and suddenly the same world reveals opportunities, synchronicities, and encouragement you had never noticed before. Nothing outside changed. Your filter did. This is the hidden law behind declarations. They do not simply summon new outcomes. They tune your awareness to perceive what was always available but previously invisible. You were walking through a field of seeds, but only the ones matching your I am got watered. What you repeatedly name, you repeatedly notice. And what you notice, you nurture into being. So what happens when you stop declaring unconsciously? Transformation. You begin to redirect your brain's wiring away from old defaults. For years, you may have been strengthening networks of scarcity. I am broke. I never catch a break. You may have been deepening grooves of inadequacy. I'm not good enough. I always mess up. I am. But every time you interrupt those phrases with a new I am, you lay down fresh tracks. They may feel weak at first, fragile, compared to the highways of habit. But with repetition, those tracks thicken. Eventually, the old highways overgrow with weeds from disuse. This is not overnight magic. The brain respects practice. Just as a muscle doesn't transform after one workout, identity doesn't transform after one declaration. But consistent declarations paired with feeling build momentum until a tipping point comes. You no longer have to force the words. They feel native. Your nervous system has adopted them as truth. Perhaps you've felt this before. At first, saying, I am strong, feels awkward, like wearing clothes too big. But one day, after weeks of speaking it, you face a challenge. And without thinking, you act strong. The words were no longer performance. They became personality. That is neuroplasticity at work. Notice too how your body participates. The molecules of emotion discovered by Dr. Candace Pert show us that every declaration floods your cells with chemical messengers. When you speak, I am safe, your parasympathetic system activates, lowering your heart rate, calming your breath, and strengthening your immunity. This is not poetic metaphor. It is biology, obeying identity. And because the brain and body are one conversation, your posture and tone matter. Say, I am confident, while slouching with shallow breath, and the contradiction undermines the message. Say it standing tall, shoulders open with a grounded inhale, and your nervous system integrates the truth more easily. Words are signals, but embodiment is the amplifier. This is the neuroscience of I am your words. Instruct your brain. Your brain filters your world, your body follows suit, and your future bends accordingly. You are always declaring. The only question is whether you are doing so unconsciously repeating scripts that shrink you or consciously authoring new pathways of becoming. So, begin small. Catch yourself in the act of careless declarations. Replace them not with grand illusions, but with truthful, growing statements. I am learning. I am opening. I am willing. The brain does not demand perfection. It requires repetition. Each time you speak differently, you fire differently. Each time you fire differently, you wire differently. And each time you wire differently, your life begins to unfold along a new path. In the end, your brain is a mirror polishing itself according to the words you hand it. Speak limitation, and limitation reflects back. Speak possibility, and possibility reflects back. Speak identity, and identity reflects back. That is the science. Beneath the sacred truth, declare, and it is done. Life is not random. It runs on loops. Every day, your inner dialogue sparks a cycle that moves from thought to word to world. Most people live inside this cycle unconsciously, assuming circumstances come first, words follow, and thoughts trail behind. But in truth, the cycle flows the opposite way. The thought births the word. The word becomes the filter. The filter shapes perception. Perception molds action. Action reinforces thought. Round and round it goes until you mistake the loop for your personality. Imagine this. You wake up and think, I never get things right. It seems harmless enough, just a fleeting thought. But the moment it lands, you mutter under your breath, I'm such a mess. That word doesn't just float away. It registers in your subconscious as instruction. Your body follows shoulders, slumping, chest tightening. You walk into work expecting proof of your inadequacy. And because expectation is a lens, you miss the compliment your colleague gives you, but remember the one error you made. The thought became a word. The word became a posture. The posture became perception. The perception became experience. And the experience reinforced the original thought. See, I never get things right. The loop is complete. This is how worlds are built. Not in sudden catastrophes, not in grand miracles, but in small, repeated cycles of declaration. You speak the world you expect, and then you meet the world you spoke. It's not magic. It's mechanics. The danger is not in one careless phrase. It is in consistency. A single "I'm exhausted" won't destroy your health. But declare it daily, and your nervous system wires itself into perpetual fatigue. A single "I can't trust people" won't ruin your relationships. But repeat it often, and your brain will filter every interaction for betrayal until trust becomes impossible. Small loops repeated become lifelong landscapes. But here lies the hope: loops can be broken. Every cycle is sustained by agreement. The moment you stop agreeing, the loop weakens. The moment you interrupt the chain with a new declaration, the cycle shifts. Consider the person who always said, "I'm unlucky." Life faithfully mirrored this belief. Missed buses, broken opportunities, repeated disappointments. But one day, in defiance, they spoke differently. "I am favored." At first it felt false. Yet the act of declaring cracked the loop. The RAS began searching for moments of favor, however small: a free coffee, a kind word, a near miss on traffic. With repetition, those micro mirrors accumulated into evidence, and soon the identity of unlucky dissolved, not by chance but by choice. This is the power of the loop. It can enslave, or it can liberate. If you do not consciously choose your declarations, the loop will default to old programming, words handed down by parents, peers, culture. Perhaps you were told, "You're too much." Without realizing it, you began declaring it too. "I'm overwhelming." The loop carried you for years. But loops are not cages. They are scripts. And scripts can be rewritten. Start by tracing your own loops. Ask, what thoughts do I wake up to? What words leave my mouth most often? What emotions seem to follow me? Where does life keep giving me the same story? If you look closely, you'll see the cycle. The thought plants the word shapes the world reaffirms the thought. Recognition is liberation, because what you can see, you can redirect. When you catch an old loop, pause. Name it gently. This is the scarcity loop. This is the unworthy loop. Then break it with a new declaration. Not a grandiose leap, but a believable pivot. Replace "I never get this right" with "I am learning." Replace "I'm always late" with "I am becoming more present." Replace "I can't trust anyone" with "I am attracting trustworthy people." These new words begin to alter the filter. The altered filter begins to shift perception. The new perception creates new experiences. And new experiences reinforce the new thought. The loop is still intact, but now it's working for you, not against you. The greatest mistake is waiting for the world to change before speaking differently. That is reverse authorship. It is like a sculptor waiting for the marble to shape itself before picking up the chisel. Words are the chisel. Declarations are the first cut into stone. If you wait for proof, you wait forever. The loop demands initiation. Speak first, and the world responds. Think of declarations as setting the thermostat of your reality. If you declare, "I am calm," you set the temperature. Circumstances may bring a cold draft of stress, but your system works to restore the set point. If you declare, "I am creative," you tune your brain to notice opportunities for innovation, adjusting the environment to match. The thermostat doesn't describe the room, it directs it. Your words are no different. And here's the truth: you are always in a loop. Even silence is declaration. Even avoidance is declaration. When you refuse to speak new words, you are unconsciously agreeing with old ones. Neutrality is impossible. Authorship is constant. The only question is whether your loop is chosen or inherited, empowering or depleting, intentional or accidental. So today decide. Interrupt the loops that enslave. Begin new loops that liberate. Speak not to report but to rewrite. Let your thoughts fuel your words. Your words filter your world, and your world reinforce your identity in a cycle of growth, not decay. The loop will always run. Make sure it's running in the direction you desire. At the heart of every transformation is assumption. You do not get what you wish for. You get what you assume to be true. Wishful thinking leaves you waiting. Assumption places you inside the reality before it arrives. This is the law behind the voice. The world does not bend to effort, nor does it negotiate with hope. It reflects identity. It mirrors belief. It organizes itself around what you assume you already are. Neville Goddard, the mystic teacher of the 20th century, called it the law of assumption. His words were radical in their simplicity. Assume it is done and it becomes. Not one day, not after the right conditions, not when you prove yourself worthy. Now, the assumption itself is the seed, and life cannot help but respond to seed. Consider the way your brain already proves this law. When you assume something is true, your reticular activating system RAS filters reality to match it. If you assume you are unlucky, your RAS will spotlight every setback, every missed opportunity, every disappointment, and ignore the wins that don't fit the identity. If you assume you are favored, the same mechanism begins scanning for blessings, highlighting open doors, synchronicities, and support you would otherwise overlook. Reality doesn't change first, assumption does. Reality simply follows. This is not self-deception. It is self-direction. You are always assuming something about yourself. The only question is whether those assumptions were chosen by you or inherited from the voices of parents, teachers, and culture. You may never have consciously decided to assume I am not enough yet. If that script was repeated in your childhood, it became your unconscious default. Without awareness, you live out a contract you never signed. The good news is that the law works both ways. Just as old assumptions created old worlds, new assumptions can create new ones. Think about identity statements, like I am healing or I am worthy of love. At first, they may feel foreign, like clothes that don't fit. But the moment you speak them as assumptions, not hopes but facts, you begin reprogramming your nervous system. Your posture shifts subtly. Your choices align differently. You walk into rooms expecting new outcomes. An expectation is a magnet. Life bends toward what you believe is already true. This is why mere affirmations often fail. To repeat, I am rich while secretly vibrating with lack is not assumption, it's performance. Your subconscious isn't fooled by grammar. It listens for coherence. If your words say one thing but your energy screams another, the law responds to energy. Empty affirmations are like writing checks with no funds in the account. Assumption, by contrast, is depositing truth in advance. It is walking as though the reality already belongs to you. Science echoes this mystical law. Psychologists call it self-concept congruence. Your behavior will always align with who you believe you are, not what you wish you were. Tell a smoker I'm trying to quit, and their relapse rate remains high. Tell the same person to declare I'm not a smoker, and the relapse rate plummets. The difference isn't willpower, it's identity. Once you assume, the nervous system and behavior follow. Assumption also rewires how others interact with you. Human beings are equipped with mirror neuron cells that echo the emotional and behavioral states of those around them. When you walk into a space carrying the assumption, I am valuable, others subconsciously reflect that back. They treat you as you treat yourself. Not because you demanded it, but because your assumption broadcasted a frequency they could not ignore. But here lies the challenge. Assumption requires courage. It asks you to declare before you see evidence. It invites you to walk as though healed while symptoms remain, to live as though prosperous while the bank balance looks bleak, to embody love while loneliness lingers. Most people wait for proof. They wait to feel safe before assuming safety. They wait to see abundance before assuming abundance. But proof is not the cause. Proof is the echo. The law does not bend to evidence. Evidence bends to law. This does not mean blind denial of circumstances. It means refusing to let circumstances dictate identity. You can acknowledge pain while still assuming healing. You can admit lack while still assuming provision. The shift is subtle but powerful. This is happening, but it is not who I am. Circumstances are temporary. Assumptions are eternal until replaced. To practice assumption, begin with small shifts. Instead of saying, I hope I get through this, declare I am getting through this. Instead of whispering, I wish I were confident, affirm I am becoming confident. Instead of longing for love, assume I am loved, and I am love. Speak it until the body starts to relax into it. Expect the subtle changes, a new calmness, a lifted head, an altered tone of voice. Those micro adjustments are the universe rearranging itself in response to your assumption. Every great transformation begins here, not with more effort but with a deeper identity. The student who once struggled begins to excel, not when they work twice as hard but when they assume I am a learner. The entrepreneur breaks through not by hustling endlessly, but by assuming I am a creator of value. The weary heart finds connection not by begging for love, but by assuming I am already worthy of being cherished. The law is not complicated. It is simple, stubborn, and universal. What you assume, you eventually live. Your declarations are not empty sounds. They are contracts written in the language of identity. The universe is not judging worthiness. It is reflecting coherence. So pause. Ask yourself, what am I assuming about myself? Silently, daily, habitually, are those assumptions ones I would choose? If not, the invitation is here. Assume differently, speak differently, live differently, and watch as the world, faithful to its nature, reorganizes itself around the voice that no longer hopes but knows. Words alone do not move mountains. Emotion does. A declaration without feeling is like a lamp without electricity, well-designed, potentially useful, but powerless to give light. This is why countless people repeat affirmations for months and see little change. Their words are hollow, stripped of energy. The subconscious mind is not persuaded by clever phrasing. It listens for vibration. It responds to coherence between language and emotion. Think of it this way. Your voice is a signal, but emotion is the voltage behind it. A whispered, I am enough, infused with conviction, carries more force than 1,000 shouted, I am confident, repeated with doubt. Your nervous system is exquisitely tuned to emotional charge. When thought and feeling merge, the brain encodes the statement as truth. When they are split, the brain dismisses the words as noise. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains it simply, when thought and emotion become one, you move from wishing into creating. Neuroscience confirms this. Elevated emotions, joy, gratitude, love, wonder, release chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin, which open the brain to new wiring. At the same time, stress, emotions, fear, shame, anger, release, cortisol, and adrenaline, which lock the brain into survival patterns. The state of your body determines whether your words are seeds or static. Consider the declaration, I am abundant. Spoken with fear, the body hears, lack not abundance. The subconscious translates, we are not safe. Spoken with gratitude, perhaps as you list the small provisions you already have, the same words carry entirely different weight. The body hears, we have enough. We are provided for. Chemistry shifts. The immune system strengthens. The mind opens to possibility. Reality begins to echo what the body has already believed. This is why alignment matters more than repetition. You can repeat, I am loved 1,000 times, but if your chest is tight and your breath is shallow, your body registers dissonance. But when you say it while remembering a moment of genuine connection, when your heart softens your shoulders, relax, the nervous system integrates it as a believable truth. Emotion is the bridge between declaration and embodiment. History and scripture knew this long before science. Ancient rituals always paired word with feeling chants, with dance prayers, with song declarations, with physical movement. They understood that sound without emotion is empty. Emotion is what opens the gate between conscious intention and subconscious programming. The stories bear witness. A young student once told daily, "You are brilliant," saw little change until she began to believe it. Her breakthrough came not from hearing the phrase again, but from the moment she felt the warmth in her teacher's eyes and let it land in her heart. The emotion sealed the declaration. From then on, her brain rewired itself to match the new identity. Words planted the seed, emotion watered it. This principle also explains why negative declarations cut so deep. A child hears, "You are worthless," spoken in anger. The words alone might be shrugged off, but the emotional violence fused to them imprints the subconscious permanently. Years later, the adult may not even remember the exact sentence, but they still feel its residue every time they doubt their value. This is the double edge of emotion. It can enslave, or it can liberate. The invitation then is to use emotion deliberately. Do not just speak declarations mechanically. Fuse them with elevated feeling. Before declaring "I am peaceful," breathe slowly until your body relaxes. Before affirming "I am abundant," recall a moment of gratitude that swelled your chest. Before saying "I am love," close your eyes and summon the warmth of someone who once cherished you. The feeling charges the words like current to a wire. You do not need to fake grand emotions. Start with small but genuine ones. Gratitude for the meal in front of you, relief at one breath of silence, joy in the face of a friend. These are authentic frequencies. Use them as carriers for your declarations. The subconscious is not persuaded by grandeur, it is persuaded by coherence. Even a quiet, authentic declaration ripples outward more powerfully than a loud but hollow one. Emotion also anchors memory. Neuroscientists have long known that events tied to strong emotions are remembered more vividly. The same is true of declarations. Say "I am free" while flat and distracted, and the brain forgets it quickly. Say it while tears stream down your face in a moment of release, and the nervous system records it as identity. Your brain wires around what you feel deeply, not what you repeat blandly. This is why embodiment rituals help. Walk your declaration. Pair words with movement. Stand tall when saying "I am strong." Smile when saying "I am joyful." Place your hand on your heart when saying "I am loved." The body cues emotion, and emotion empowers words. Soon the declaration no longer feels external. It feels like you. So remember, declarations are not performances. They are transmissions. The universe does not measure syllables. It measures resonance. When words and feelings are aligned, the signal is clear. When they are split, the signal is static. From this moment on, don't just say it, feel it. Don't just repeat it, embody it. Let every "I am" be carried on the wings of emotion, so the words you speak are not hollow air, but living frequencies. For only when the heart and the tongue agree does reality lean in to listen. The greatest mistake many people make with declarations is turning them into performance. They repeat phrases like lines in a play, hoping sheer volume or frequency will convince the universe to comply. But declarations are not theater, they are contracts. And contracts are binding only when signed in alignment, not when staged in pretense. To perform is to act as though the declaration is separate from you, something you are trying to project outward. To align is to speak as though the declaration is already true within you, needing no applause, no external validation. Performance is about convincing others. Alignment is about convincing yourself. Performance burns out quickly because it requires constant effort. Alignment sustains itself because it flows from identity. Think about the difference between saying "I am confident" with a nervous laugh versus saying it quietly, calmly, with your shoulders relaxed and your breath steady. In the first, your words fight against your energy. In the second, your words emerge from it. Which one will your subconscious believe? Which one will your nervous system obey? Alignment is not in the decibel level of your voice, but in the coherence between word tone, body, and belief. This is why children can sniff out inauthenticity so quickly. A parent can say everything is fine while their tone vibrates with stress. The child believes the stress, not the words. Your subconscious functions the same way. It does not obey what you say if what you mean contradicts it. The deeper signal always wins. The key then is to stop performing affirmations and start aligning declarations. Alignment means you choose words that you can genuinely lean into, even if they stretch you. If declaring "I am wealthy" triggers disbelief and resistance, shift the language until it resonates with where you are willing to agree. Try "I am opening to wealth" or "I am learning to steward abundance." This is not weakness. It is wisdom. It ensures your words and your energy are partners, not opponents. Performance often comes from impatience. We want instant proof, so we say the biggest declarations we can imagine, hoping to leapfrog the journey. But misaligned declarations become counterproductive. The subconscious hears the gap between word and energy and labels it as falsehood. Then instead of building new pathways, the brain deepens old grooves of doubt. Every failed performance convinces you declarations don't work. When the truth is misaligned, declarations never can. Alignment, by contrast, grows gradually. It honors the nervous system's pace. It respects the brain's need for repetition. It builds coherence step by step until what once felt impossible begins to feel natural. When you declare, "I am learning," your body agrees. When you declare, "I am opening," your spirit relaxes. And when agreement happens, momentum follows. Consider the example of someone trying to heal from illness. Saying, "I am perfectly healthy," while still battling symptoms, may feel dishonest. The subconscious resists. But saying, "I am healing," or "I am regaining strength daily," allows the body to cooperate. The words are believable, yet still empowering. With time, as progress is felt, the declarations can deepen. First healing, then wholeness. First strength, then vitality. Alignment ensures the seed matches the soil so growth can occur. The distinction is simple. Performance seeks applause. Alignment seeks resonance. When you perform, you look outward for validation. When you align, you look inward for agreement. The energy is entirely different. Performance is exhausting because it is fueled by insecurity. Alignment is sustaining because it is fueled by truth. So how do you cultivate alignment? Begin by listening to your own body as you declare. Notice the tension in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the resistance in your gut. These are not failures. They are feedback. They are your nervous system's way of saying, "This declaration doesn't feel safe yet." Instead of forcing the words louder, adjust them softer, closer to what feels believable. Alignment grows not by bulldozing resistance, but by respecting it. You can also test alignment through posture. Speak your declaration standing tall, breathing deeply, and notice if your body softens or stiffens. If it softens, the words are aligned. If it stiffens, adjust until the body relaxes. Your body is the subconscious in flesh. It knows whether you are performing or aligning. Another practice is emotional pairing. Before declaring, recall a moment that matches the energy you are calling in. If you want to declare abundance, remember a time you felt provided for, even in small ways. If you want to declare confidence, recall a moment you spoke boldly, even briefly. Anchor your declaration in those feelings, and suddenly the words resonate instead of ring hollow. Remember, alignment does not mean shrinking your vision forever. It means building a bridge between where you are and where you are going. Each aligned declaration is a plank laid across the gap. Eventually, you can walk all the way into your boldest truth, but you get there by stepping into believable resonance, not leaping into unbelievable performance. Declarations spoken from alignment ripple outward. They require no convincing. They carry no strain. They simply are. And because the universe responds to coherence, not volume, such declarations manifest faster than the loudest performances ever could. So stop acting. Stop rehearsing lines that do not fit your spirit. Stop shouting words that your body cannot believe. Instead, speak gently, but truly. Speak in resonance with who you are becoming. Speak words your heart can nod to, even if your mind is still catching up. That is alignment. And alignment, not performance, is the voice the universe always listens to. There is a knowing that cannot be charted on graphs or explained through equations. It is not found in logic's courtroom, where evidence is weighed and verdicts are argued. It lives deeper, quieter, in a place the mind cannot control, the heart. And when the heart speaks, it does so not in analysis but in resonance. The signal is peace. Not peace as the absence of problems, but peace as the undeniable assurance that even in chaos, you are exactly where you are meant to be. Logic tells you to wait until circumstances align. The heart tells you to move when peace arrives, even if the conditions look impossible. Logic says, "This doesn't add up." The heart whispers, but it rings true. Logic demands proof before obedience. The heart offers peace as proof enough, and those who learn to trust this contradiction discover a life beyond calculation, a life led by resonance rather than reason. Consider how often logic has kept people bound. A new opportunity presents itself, but the logical mind calculates risk. The finances don't look stable, the timing isn't perfect, the path isn't guaranteed. Fear disguises itself as wisdom, and so they stay where they are. Yet deep within the heart was at rest with the choice to leap. Peace had arrived, but because peace contradicted logic, they ignored it and missed what was waiting. You may recognize this pattern in your own story. Times when you had no rational reason to say yes, yet you felt a stillness inside that urged you forward. Or moments when logic shouted, yes, but your chest tightened and your breath grew shallow, a sign that the heart was not at rest. Peace contradicts logic not to confuse you, but to free you. It interrupts the tyranny of analysis and invites you into a deeper intelligence. Science has begun to catch up with this truth. The HeartMath Institute discovered that the heart has its own neural network, often called the little brain in the heart. This network communicates constantly with the larger brain, influencing perception, emotion, and even decision-making. When the heart registers coherence, when your inner state aligns with truth, it sends signals of regulation throughout the body. You feel it as calm, clarity, and ease. When the heart registers incoherence, when something is off despite logical appeal, it sends signals of stress, confusion, and unease. In simple terms, the heart knows before the head does. This is why peace often arrives as contradiction. Logic is built on past data, on what has been seen and measured before. The heart is tuned to resonance, to what is true in essence, even if unseen in evidence. Logic can only project what is probable. The heart discerns what is possible. Peace, therefore, is not ignorance of facts. It is alignment with truth deeper than facts. Think of the countless breakthroughs born from people who trusted peace over logic. The artist who abandoned a safe career to create feeling an unexplainable stillness in the choice. The couple who adopted a child against all financial odds, yet carried a peace that provision would follow, and it did. The patient who, despite dire medical reports, declared, "I will live," and felt a calm assurance, later defying the prognosis. In each case, logic forecasted failure, peace declared otherwise, and peace was right. But let us be clear, trusting peace does not mean abandoning wisdom. It does not mean recklessly leaping without reflection. It means recognizing that wisdom is incomplete without the witness of peace. Logic may illuminate the details, but peace confirms direction. If you only trust logic, you will move where it is safe, but not always where it is true. If you only trust impulse, you may confuse adrenaline for guidance. But when peace steadies you, even in contradiction, you can move with confidence that transcends circumstance. How do you know if peace is real? Pay attention to your body. Logic races in the head, but peace settles in the chest. Logic exhausts with its endless what-ifs, but peace quiets the noise with a simple, "It is well." Peace does not demand certainty. It grants stability even in uncertainty. That is how you know the difference. The challenge is that most people have been conditioned to distrust peace. We are taught to overvalue logic, to worship evidence, to fear contradiction. But the heart's voice requires unlearning that reflex. It requires practice. Start by recalling moments when you felt a calm clarity that defied reason, perhaps a choice that made no sense yet later revealed itself as exactly right. That memory is proof that peace is trustworthy. Next, practice pausing before decisions. Let logic lay out its spreadsheets and arguments, but then ask, where is my peace? Notice your breath, your chest, your posture. Peace may not shout, but it never wavers. If peace is absent, wait. If peace is present, even against the odds, listen. Over time, you will discover that peace is not fragile. It is the most resilient compass you possess. Logic can fail when new variables appear. Circumstances can betray predictions. But peace remains steady because it is anchored not in probability, but in resonance. It knows the melody of truth, and when you align with it, you feel the harmony, even if logic still hears discord. This is the paradox. Peace will contradict logic precisely when logic is blind. It will lead you through doors the mind never saw. It will anchor you in storms the mind never planned for. It will invite you into futures the mind never dared to imagine. And when you look back, you will realize logic was not betrayed. It was expanded. Peace did not cancel reason. It carried you beyond it. So when the next decision arrives, and the spreadsheets are screaming one thing, but your heart rests in another, remember, peace does not need to make sense to be true. It only needs to be followed. For peace is not weakness. It is wisdom in a deeper tongue, guiding you to the places logic is too limited to reach. For most of us, the mind has been crowned king. From childhood, we are taught that intellect rules decision-making. We are praised for logic, rewarded for analysis, celebrated for problem-solving. The heart, by contrast, is often portrayed as unreliable, emotional, even dangerous. Don't follow your heart, they warn. It will deceive you. And so generation after generation, people have silenced the heart in favor of the mind. But what if the hierarchy is backward? What if the heart was never meant to be subordinate to the mind, but the mind was meant to serve the heart? What if peace, not logic, was supposed to be the compass and reason, the map? The compass directs where to go. The map helps you navigate the terrain. Confuse the order and you may have a beautiful map, but no true direction. This is not sentimentality. It is structure. The heart is designed as the first receiver of truth. Science confirms it. Research from the HeartMath Institute shows that the heart's electromagnetic field is 60 times greater in amplitude than the brain's and can be detected several feet away from the body. More striking still, the heart often registers intuitive signals before the brain does. In other words, your heart feels truth seconds before your mind interprets it. When you reorder the hierarchy, you begin to trust the first witness, not just the final judge. Think of it like this. The heart discerns the mind, interprets the body, executes. This is the sacred order. When you invert it mind over heart, you end up enslaved to analysis, second-guessing, every decision, exhausting yourself with what-ifs, never feeling settled, even after the facts align. But when the heart leads, peace comes first. The mind then organizes facts in service of that peace. The body follows with aligned action. Consider the example of a career change. Logic may list 10 reasons to stay where you are: steady income, clear trajectory, social approval. Yet if your heart feels heavy, restless, suffocated, no amount of logic will silence that signal. The dissonance lingers until you listen. On the other hand, when your heart feels peace about moving into uncertainty, though the spreadsheets say otherwise, something extraordinary happens. The mind begins working creatively to support the heart's decision. Instead of arguing against the choice, it searches for strategies to make it possible. That is the mind's true role, not to dictate direction, but to serve the truth revealed by the heart. This reordering is radical because it means you must dethrone the idol of logic. Logic is useful, but it is not ultimate. Logic can only calculate based on past data. It cannot predict futures it has never seen. The heart, however, is tuned to resonance with the unseen. It feels the song of possibilities before evidence arrives. If you only follow logic, you will live confined to the known. If you follow the heart, you step into the yet-to-be known. Of course, this does not mean abandoning the mind. It means repositioning it. The mind is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. When the heart leads, the mind becomes a powerful ally, structuring plans, solving problems, organizing details. But when the mind rules, the heart is silenced, and you live by probability instead of possibility. Many people fear trusting the heart because they confuse it with impulse. But the heart's voice is not the same as adrenaline or craving. Impulse is restless, urgent, demanding. The heart is steady, calm, unhurried. Impulse says, act now or lose everything. The heart says, be still, it is already yours. Learning to distinguish between the two is part of reordering the hierarchy. This reordering also requires humility. The mind resists serving because it has been trained to believe it is supreme. It will fight for control with endless arguments, doubts, and scenarios. But humility teaches you to say, I don't need to understand everything to trust the peace I feel. This humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. It acknowledges that truth exceeds calculation. When you reorder the hierarchy, you notice profound changes. Decisions no longer feel like battles. You feel anchored even when external facts shift. Anxiety loosens its grip because the mind is no longer frantically trying to secure certainty, it is resting in the heart's assurance. Creativity flows more freely because the mind is liberated from fear and instead channels its energy into building what the heart already knows. Reordering also heals relationships. When people lead with only logic, they often miss the subtleties of connection. They calculate compatibility on paper but ignore the resonance of presence. The heart, however, discerns sincerity, safety, and alignment before the mind can list reasons why. Trusting that discernment protects you from entanglements, logic might excuse, but the heart already knew were wrong. So how do you practice this reordering? Start small. In daily choices, pause to ask, what does my heart say? Don't rush to justify it. Don't demand it make sense. Simply acknowledge the signal. Then, allow your mind to serve the signal, not silence it. If your heart says rest, let your mind structure your schedule to make it possible. If your heart says speak, let your mind craft the words. If your heart says leap, let your mind plan the steps. This is order heart leading mind, serving body following. Reordering the hierarchy is not about abandoning intelligence. It is about elevating wisdom. Intelligence analyzes. Wisdom resonates. Intelligence calculates outcomes. Wisdom discerns alignment. Intelligence is valuable, but wisdom is sovereign. And wisdom lives in the heart. So, let the heart lead. Let the mind assist. Let the body act. When you do, you will find yourself walking paths of logic never could have mapped, yet paths where peace accompanies you step by step. It is one thing to feel peace. It is another to act on it. Many people stop at the moment of resonance. They sense clarity in the heart. They recognize the quiet assurance, yet they hesitate to translate it into motion. They fear making mistakes, being judged, or stepping into uncertainty. But resonance without action is wasted potential. Peace is not meant to be admired. It is meant to be embodied. Translation is the bridge. It takes the subtle signal of the heart and converts it into tangible steps in the world. This does not mean rushing blindly or abandoning wisdom. It means allowing the heart's knowing to set direction, then inviting the mind to serve that direction with strategy. The heart says where, the mind says how. Together they give birth to aligned action. Think of resonance like music. When you hear a melody that moves you, you don't just sit in awe, you tap your foot, hum along, maybe even dance. The body instinctively translates sound into movement. In the same way, when your heart feels resonance, your life is meant to move in rhythm with it. Action is the dance to the song of peace. But how do you know what steps to take? Start small. Resonance often doesn't hand you a full blueprint. It offers a direction, a gentle nudge, a sense of rightness. Translating that into action means asking, what is the next faithful step? Not the entire staircase, not the final outcome, just the next step that honors the peace I feel. If the heart says, this relationship is right, the next step may be a simple conversation, not a lifetime plan. If the heart says, this work is mine to do, the next step may be enrolling in one class, not quitting your job overnight. Translation honors resonance without forcing it into premature conclusions. The key is trust. Logic craves certainty before movement. The heart requires only peace. Translation is the practice of trusting that if peace is here, provision will be also. You act not because every variable is solved, but because the heart is settled. Over time, you discover that each step reveals the next. Translation unfolds gradually like a story written one line at a time. There is also discipline in translation. Peace can be subtle. If you delay too long, fear grows louder than the signal. Hesitation corrodes resonance. To translate well, you must act while peace is fresh. Not hastily, but faithfully. When you sense the heart's nudge, write it down. Speak it aloud. Take one immediate action, however small, to anchor it. A phone call, a journal entry, a calendar block. Action grounds resonance in reality. Without it, the moment drifts away forgotten in the noise of daily life. Practical translation also means recognizing resistance. Your mind will often argue against what the heart has confirmed. It will list risks, question timing, and raise doubts. Do not demonize these thoughts. They are part of the process. Let the mind voice its concerns, then redirect it. Your job is not to decide direction. Your job is to support it. When the heart says yes, the mind's role is to strategize, not sabotage. Reframe resistance as raw material. Instead of letting doubts paralyze, you turn them into questions that fuel preparation. For example, if your heart says, start the business, but your mind panics about finances, translate the panic into preparation. Create a budget, research options, gather resources. This is alignment in action. The heart sets direction. The mind builds the path. Fear becomes fuel for wisdom instead of a barrier to obedience. Translation also demands consistency. Acting once on resonance is powerful, but transformation comes from sustained action. Each time you honor the heart with a practical step, you strengthen the neural pathway that says, I trust my inner knowing. Over time, this trust becomes second nature. You stop overthinking every choice. You stop outsourcing discernment. You begin living in rhythm with peace, step after step, until action and resonance are inseparable. And here is the mystery. As you translate resonance into action, the external world responds. Doors open that logic never predicted. Opportunities align. People appear at the right moment. It is as though the universe was waiting for your obedience to arrange the provision. This is why translation matters. Peace is not meant to stay hidden in the chest. It is meant to reshape the world through your hands and feet. Think of the farmer who feels the peace to plant, even when the skies threaten drought. His neighbors mock his timing, but he translates the peace into action, digging soil and sowing seeds. Weeks later, rain comes, and his field bursts with harvest. Peace contradicted logic. Translation proved it right. Or the woman who feels peace about moving to a new city without a job lined up. She translates it into the practical action of packing, applying, networking. Within months, the provision arrives. The world bends because she acted. So here is the invitation. Stop treating peace as a private luxury. Translate it into public action. When the heart confirms, do not stall until the mind feels comfortable. Move. Even if it is one small step, move. Because peace without translation is like a song never sung. Its beauty remains hidden when it was always meant to echo. Let your life be that echo. Let your actions become the visible proof of the invisible resonance within. For when the heart speaks and the body obeys, the world does not stay the same. It rearranges itself around your courage. Every great shift in life begins with disruption. Something stirs inside you, a quiet whisper, a still peace, a resonance that will not let you go, and suddenly, the familiar places no longer fit. The job feels too small. The relationship feels misaligned. The city you've always called home begins to feel like a cage. And though nothing external has changed, everything internal has. The unsettling truth is clear. It's time to leave. But leaving is never simple because the familiar is safe. Even when it's painful, it is predictable. The human nervous system craves predictability, even if predictability comes at the cost of fulfillment. Certainty is addictive. It makes us cling to routines, labels, and roles that suffocate us, but at least keep us from the terror of the unknown. This is why so many remain stuck, not because they lack vision, but because they fear losing certainty. Yet obedience is almost always disruptive. The voice of peace rarely calls you to remain where you are most comfortable. It calls you into wilderness, into uncharted paths, into the contradiction of moving before you have the full map. Think of Abraham called to leave his homeland with no address for his destination, only the promise, "Go and I will show you." Or Moses stepping into Pharaoh's court with nothing but a staff and a word. Or Mary accepting the unexplainable call to carry divinity in her womb. In every story, obedience meant departure, and departure meant walking without certainty. The problem is that we confuse certainty with security. We believe that knowing the outcome equals being safe. But in reality, certainty is often the cage that keeps us from true security, the security that comes from alignment with truth. Logic may tell you that staying is safer because you can measure the risks. But peace whispers that real safety lies in obedience, even if the risks cannot be calculated. Leaving the familiar requires courage because it dismantles your identity scaffolding. Who are you if you no longer work at the company that gave you status? Who are you if you step away from the relationship that defined your belonging? Who are you if you move to a place where nobody knows your name? The ego panics at these questions because it builds identity on externals. But obedience invites you to build identity on resonance, on who you truly are, beyond roles and reputation. This is why obedience often feels like death before it feels like resurrection. You bury the old structures, the old securities, the old certainties. The grave feels final, but it is the soil of new life. Every leap into the unknown is a funeral for what no longer fits and a womb for what is to come. You cannot cling to both. You cannot walk into the new while dragging the corpse of the familiar. And yet obedience is never reckless. It is not abandoning wisdom or discarding preparation. It is simply reordering your allegiance, choosing peace over predictability, resonance over reputation, alignment over approval. You may not know all the steps, but you know the first. And the first step is always to leave. Consider the butterfly. Before it flies, it enters the cocoon. The caterpillar cannot calculate what it will look like on the other side. It only obeys the instinct to enter darkness, surrender to transformation, and trust that wings will come. If it clung to the branch instead, afraid of losing what it knows, it would never discover what it was born to be. You are no different. Obedience to leave the familiar is your cocoon. Certainty will never escort you into transformation. Surrender will. Leaving also exposes you to misunderstanding. People anchored in their own certainties will not understand why you abandon yours. They will question your sanity, your motives, your timing. They will project their fears onto your freedom. This is the price of obedience, to walk misunderstood. But history shows us that those who obey peace always look irrational to those who worship logic. You cannot explain resonance to someone who only believes in evidence. So how do you leave the familiar without certainty? You anchor in trust. You remind yourself that provision follows obedience, not the other way around. You rehearse the truth that every great story begins with a departure. You remind your trembling ego that fear of the unknown is natural, but not final. Then you take one step, not all at once, just one. Pack one box, send one email, say one no, say one yes. The first step breaks the spell of certainty. The next steps follow more easily. And here is the paradox: when you finally leave, you discover that the certainty you craved was never real. Jobs end. Relationships shift. Plans collapse. What you thought was secure was always fragile. But what carries you in the wilderness? The peace that surpasses understanding, that is unshakable. That is the true security, and it was waiting for you on the other side of obedience. So here is the invitation. Stop waiting for certainty before leaving. Certainty will not come. Leave anyway. Trust the whisper. Honor the resonance. Obey the peace. The familiar is comfortable, but it is not your destiny. Your destiny waits in the places only obedience can take you, beyond the borders of certainty, in the vast and holy unknown. Obedience always comes with a price tag. It is never free. To align with the voice of peace often means walking into risk, risking the very things the world has trained you to cling to: your safety, your reputation, your approval. It means facing resistance, both inside yourself and in the people around you. And this is why so few dare to obey. Not because they don't hear the whisper, but because they are afraid of what it might cost. Risk is the first wall you encounter. To obey often means stepping into territory where outcomes cannot be guaranteed. It feels like signing a contract with invisible ink. You sense the assurance, but you cannot see the details. Logic screams, "What if it fails?" The ego echoes, "What if I lose everything?" And in truth, you might lose something. You might lose money, predictability, or comfort. But what if the greater risk is staying in a place that slowly kills your spirit? What if the greater danger is never finding out who you could have become if you had obeyed? Safety is often just slow death disguised as security. Then comes reputation. When you obey what peace whispers, you will rarely look logical to those still bound by certainty. People may label you reckless, irresponsible, naive. They will measure your choices by their own fears and conclude that you have lost your mind. But reputation is a fragile idol. If you live for approval, you will die by criticism. True obedience requires surrendering the need to be understood. You are not called to be validated. You are called to be aligned. Think of the prophets and pioneers throughout history. Noah obeyed the voice to build an ark when no one had seen rain. His reputation was destroyed long before the flood came. Yet his obedience preserved life. Rosa Parks obeyed her conviction to stay seated facing ridicule, arrest, and public scorn. Her reputation among the fearful was damaged, but her obedience became a catalyst for freedom. Reputation may suffer in the short term, but alignment outlives opinion. Resistance is the third cost, and it comes in layers. The first is internal resistance, the fear, doubt, and shame that rise within you the moment you decide to act. The human brain craves homeostasis. Any change, even positive, feels like a threat. So when you step out of familiar patterns, your nervous system will sound alarms. Go back, stay safe, don't risk it. This is why obedience feels so uncomfortable. It is literally rewiring your system. But discomfort is not danger, it is growth. The second layer is external resistance. The people around you may push back against your obedience. Sometimes it comes from hostility, but often it comes from fear masked as concern. Loved ones may warn you, don't throw your life away. Colleagues may resent you for breaking from the script they are too afraid to abandon. Friends may distance themselves because your courage exposes their compromise. Resistance is not proof you are wrong, it is often proof you are right. The third layer is spiritual resistance. Obedience disrupts the status quo, and every system, whether cultural, relational, or spiritual, pushes back when disrupted. Expect opposition. Expect the path to grow harder before it gets easier. But remember, resistance is a sign you are moving. Only those advancing feel the wind. The stationary never do. Facing risk, reputation, and resistance requires an anchor deeper than approval. That anchor is peace. Peace does not erase fear, but it steadies you in the midst of it. Peace does not guarantee reputation, but it assures you that alignment matters more. Peace does not eliminate resistance, but it strengthens you to endure it. When peace is your compass, the storms cannot disorient you. So how do you walk through these costs without collapsing? First, reframe risk. Instead of asking, what if I fail, ask, what if I grow? Instead of fearing loss, anticipate transformation. Failure is not final, it is fertilizer. Every step of obedience, even the ones that don't unfold as you hoped, becomes a seed of growth. Second, release reputation. Write this truth into your spirit. I am not defined by who misunderstands me. I am defined by who I am becoming. When you stop negotiating with other people's approval, you become free to obey without apology. Third, expect resistance and prepare for it. Don't be shocked when fear rises, when voices criticize, when obstacles appear. Anticipate it. Train for it. Let resistance become confirmation that you are on the right path. Every great movement of history faced resistance before it bore fruit. Why would your obedience be any different? The paradox is this: what you fear losing in obedience, safety, reputation, approval, rarely matters as much as you think. Safety was an illusion. Reputation was built on shallow opinions. Approval was conditional. But what you gain in obedience, alignment, integrity, transformation is eternal. So let this truth settle. Obedience will cost you, but disobedience will cost you more. To stay safe is to die slowly. To preserve reputation is to betray destiny. To avoid resistance is to forfeit growth. But to face the cost is to walk free. Peace is worth the risk. Truth is worth the misunderstanding. Destiny is worth the resistance. And when you choose obedience in the face of all three, you discover what the fearful never will: the freedom that only comes from living aligned no matter the cost. Most people pray for miracles, but resist the very obedience that makes miracles possible. We want divine intervention, but we also want to stay in control. We long for breakthrough, but we also cling to the familiar. Yet miracles rarely appear in comfort zones. They appear in places of obedience where you have stepped out, stretched thin, left certainty behind, and positioned yourself where only grace can sustain you. Obedience expands capacity because it empties your hands. As long as you are clutching the familiar, there is no room to receive the new. The miracle comes when you release what you thought was security and trust that something greater will fill the space. Remember the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. His obedience to release his small meal created space for multiplication. Had he clung to his portion, it would have fed one. Because he obeyed it, fed thousands. Obedience makes room. Capacity grows when you risk beyond your strength. As long as you only attempt what you can manage, you never discover what God can multiply. But when you step into assignments that stretch you, tasks too big, leaps too far, decisions too costly, you become a candidate for the miraculous. Your weakness becomes the womb for divine strength. Your insufficiency becomes the soil where provision sprouts. Without obedience, you remain in the territory of what you can control. With obedience, you enter the territory of what only the miraculous can sustain. This is why obedience feels uncomfortable. It strips away self-sufficiency and forces you into dependence. Logic says, don't move until you have enough. Peace says, move and enough will meet you there. When Peter stepped out of the boat at Jesus' call, he did not first confirm the physics of water walking. He obeyed, and the water held. The miracle was not in analysis. It was in obedience. The same is true for you. Miracles also require alignment. When your heart resonates with peace, but your actions stay tethered to fear, you choke the flow of provision. But when your actions align with peace, when you walk in the direction already confirmed in your spirit, you create space for synchronicity, timing, and resources to align. The universe bends to coherence. Obedience is coherence embodied. Notice too how obedience expands your perception. The miraculous often arrives disguised as ordinary until obedience unveils it. The widow in 2 Kings thought she had nothing but a jar of oil. Yet her act of obedience, pouring what little she had into borrowed vessels, revealed abundance she could not see before. The miracle was hidden in plain sight, unlocked by action. When you obey, your eyes open. You begin to see opportunities, solutions, and support that were invisible in disobedience. Obedience sharpens sight. But miracles are not only external. The greatest miracle obedience produces is internal transformation. Each time you say yes despite fear, your capacity enlarges. You discover strength you didn't know you carried. You develop resilience, forged in uncertainty. You cultivate faith that cannot be shaken by circumstances. These inner miracles become the foundation for outer ones. A person who has been transformed by obedience becomes a vessel through which miracles flow. Capacity also grows in proportion to trust. The more you obey, the more you learn that provision always follows. You begin to trust the pattern leave, and supply arrives. Risk and support appears. Step out, and the ground rises to meet you. Each act of obedience becomes a rehearsal of faith. Each rehearsal enlarges your capacity to trust again. Over time, obedience stops feeling like sacrifice and begins to feel like partnership with the miraculous. Resistance will still come, doubt will still whisper, but obedience builds memory, and memory fuels faith. You recall the times you obeyed and were sustained. You remember the moments when you risked and were rewarded. These memories become anchors in the storms of new obedience. They whisper back, "He did not fail you before, and he will not fail you now." Practical obedience does not always mean grand gestures. Sometimes, it is as simple as making a call, saying yes, walking away, or taking rest when told. The size of the act does not determine the size of the miracle. What matters is alignment. The widow's oil was ordinary, David's stone was small, the boy's lunch was meager, but each became miraculous when offered in obedience. Never underestimate the power of a small yes. So ask yourself, where is obedience asking you to expand? Where are you clinging to certainty, blocking the flow of the miraculous? What step, small or large, would clear space for provision to arrive? Obedience is not punishment. It is preparation. It makes you a vessel big enough to hold what you've been praying for. In the end, the question is not whether miracles still happen. They do. The question is whether we create space for them through obedience. Most people wait for miracles to convince them to obey. But the truth is, reversed obedience makes miracles possible. You step first. Provision follows. You release. Multiplication comes. You trust. Transformation unfolds. So let your obedience enlarge you. Let it empty your hands of the familiar so you can receive the impossible. Let it stretch you into dependence so you can host provision. Let it open your eyes so you can see abundance where others see lack. And above all, let it turn your life into a vessel wide enough, deep enough, and surrendered enough to contain the miracles already waiting for you. When you walk in obedience, the universe has a way of echoing your alignment back to you. These echoes often appear as synchronicities, coincidences, too precise to be random moments of confirmation that seem to whisper, you are on the right path. They are the winks of heaven, the fingerprints of alignment, the breadcrumbs of the Spirit left along your journey. Learning to read these signs is part of maturing from doubt into trust, from tentative steps into confident strides. A synchronicity is not just any coincidence, it is a meaningful one. Two events align in such a way that they speak to your inner resonance. You think of a friend and they call. You declare a new intention and suddenly see it mirrored in a book, a conversation, or a song. You step into obedience and within days small confirmations arrive, an open door, an encouraging word, an unexpected resource. The timing is too sharp to dismiss and peace deepens, as if the universe itself is saying yes. These signs do not create truth, they confirm it. Obedience begins with inner peace. Signs follow as affirmation. If you wait for signs before you move, you will remain stuck in hesitation. But when you act in alignment, synchronicities begin to trail behind you like ripples in water. They are not proof to persuade you, they are encouragement to sustain you. The danger is in misreading them. Not every coincidence is confirmation, not every obstacle is opposition. Immaturity looks for signs as fortune-telling, grasping for meaning, in everything becoming paralyzed by trying to decode the world like a puzzle. But wisdom recognizes that signs are not maps, they are markers. They do not replace peace, they reinforce it. If a sign contradicts the peace of the heart, it is not confirmation, it is distraction. Think of Gideon in the scriptures, who asked God for confirmation through the fleece. He laid it out and said, "If the fleece is wet and the ground is dry, I'll know it's you." The next morning it was so. Then he reversed the request. "If the ground is wet and the fleece is dry, I'll know it's you." Again it was so. Signs were granted, but notice this. Gideon already carried the inner call before the fleece. The signs did not create the assignment, they affirmed it. In your life, synchronicities will often arrive in the same way. After you declare a new identity, you will overhear a stranger speaking the very phrase you've been repeating. After you commit to a leap of faith, a resource appears seemingly out of nowhere. After you step out of the familiar, someone comes alongside you who has already walked the path. These are not coincidences to dismiss. They are reminders that you are not alone in obedience. Signs also come through repetition. Pay attention when a phrase, a number, or an image keeps appearing in different contexts. Not because numbers are magic, but because resonance echoes. The same word may arrive 3 times in a week through a conversation, a book, and a song. This is not random. It is a pattern of alignment, drawing your attention to what matters most. But here is the key. Never elevate signs above the signal of peace. Signs can be misinterpreted. Peace cannot. If a synchronicity excites you but leaves your chest tight and your breath shallow, it is not confirmation. If an opportunity seems perfect on paper but disturbs your inner stillness, it is not alignment. Signs affirm the heart. They do not replace it. The more you obey, the more you will notice synchronicities multiplying. This is not because life suddenly becomes more magical, but because your awareness sharpens. The reticular activating system in your brain filters reality based on what you deem important. When you begin walking in alignment, your brain highlights confirmations you would have previously ignored. What you once called coincidence, you now recognize as confirmation. Nothing has changed in the external world. Everything has changed in your perception. Reading signs also matures you in patience. Sometimes confirmation is immediate. Other times, it is delayed. In seasons of waiting, you may feel the silence stretching long. But remember, absence of signs is not absence of alignment. The farmer does not dig up the seed daily to check for progress. He trusts that growth is happening beneath the soil. In the same way, obedience may require trusting the initial peace, even when external confirmation is slow to arrive. The purpose of signs is not to make you dependent on them, but to strengthen you until you no longer need them. They are like training wheels on a bicycle. At first, they steady you when faith feels wobbly, but as trust matures, you ride without them. You move from needing constant confirmation to living in constant communion where peace itself is enough. So how do you practice reading synchronicities wisely? Begin by noticing without obsessing. Write down patterns. Pay attention to repetitions. Ask, does this sign deepen my peace or distract from it? If it deepens, receive it as encouragement. If it distracts, release it. Then thank God or the universe for every confirmation, however small. Gratitude sharpens discernment. The more you honor the signs, the clearer they become. And above all, remember, synchronicities are not random gifts. They are reflections of resonance. They are the universe's way of saying, keep walking. You are aligned. Do not worship them. Do not chase them. Simply let them encourage you as you continue to obey. For in the end, the goal is not to live sign to sign, but to live in continual communion. Signs are the echo. Communion is the voice. Signs confirm the path. Communion is the path. And once you learn to trust the whisper of peace, every sign becomes less about proving and more about praising gratitude for the God who walks with you, confirming that you were never walking alone. If obedience is the act of stepping out, waiting is the act of staying in. Both require courage. Both test faith. Yet waiting often proves harder than moving. Movement feels like progress. Waiting feels like suspension, like life is holding its breath while you stand still. But waiting is not punishment. It is purification. It is the furnace where desire is refined, where what is shallow burns away and what is true endures. Desire in its raw form is often tangled, part truth, part ego, part fear, part longing. We want the right thing for the wrong reasons. We want good things too soon, or permanent things, for temporary validation. And because desire drives so much of our life, it must be purified before it can be fulfilled. Waiting is the fire that does the purifying. Think of gold. In its natural state, it is mixed with impurities. The only way to refine it is by fire, where the heat separates what is valuable from what is not. Waiting works the same way. When you carry a desire through time, through silence, through the ache of not yet what is selfish, shallow, or premature, burns away. What remains is desire aligned with truth, rooted not in ego, but in spirit. This is why waiting is often so uncomfortable. It exposes motives. It shows us the layers beneath our prayers. We may begin by saying, I want this job, but after months of waiting, we discover what we really craved was validation, not vocation. Or we may say, I want this relationship, but waiting reveals that what we long for is not this person specifically, but the deeper desire to be seen cherished and loved well. The waiting purifies, stripping away the surface so the core can be revealed. The danger is in resisting this process. Many abandon obedience in the waiting, assuming silence means denial. They rush ahead, forcing outcomes, clinging to counterfeits, settling for what is available instead of what is aligned. But every shortcut births regret. Every counterfeit costs more than it gives. Desire that has not been purified becomes destructive because it is led by impatience rather than peace. Yet when you allow desire to be purified, something beautiful happens. You learn to want differently. You begin to want from a place of wholeness, not lack. You want not because you believe the object will complete you, but because you know it will complement the fullness already in you. This shift changes everything. Unpurified desire is about filling emptiness. Purified desire is about expanding overflow. Scripture gives us countless examples. Hannah longed for a child, but it was in years of waiting that her desire was purified. When the child came, she dedicated him back to God. The desire had shifted from personal vindication to divine partnership. Abraham waited decades for the promised son. In the waiting, his desire was tested and transformed until he was willing even to place Isaac on the altar. Purification had taught him that the promise was never the idol the promiser was. On a neurological level, waiting rewires the brain to handle fulfillment well. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and self-control, strengthens in seasons of delay. Gratitude pathways deepen as you learn to appreciate small blessings while longing for greater ones. Patience literally changes your biology, preparing you to steward what you once might have squandered. Waiting enlarges capacity. But waiting is not passive, it is active preparation. The farmer does not sit idly while the seed is underground. He waters weeds and watches. Likewise, waiting is a season to cultivate disciplines, build character, sharpen skills, and deepen intimacy with God. Desire matures not by fantasizing about fulfillment, but by preparing for it. If you long for love, waiting is the time to become the kind of person who can love well. If you long for success, waiting is the time to refine the habits that will sustain it. Waiting is never wasted when it is used for preparation. The question waiting always asks is this: do you want the gift more than the giver? If the answer is yes, the desire will remain restless, never satisfied, even if fulfilled. But if the waiting refines your heart to want the giver first, then whatever gift comes will be received in freedom, not idolatry. You will hold it loosely, cherish it deeply, and never confuse it with your source. That is the miracle of purified desire. It becomes safe to fulfill because it no longer enslaves you. So how do you endure waiting without despair? Anchor yourself in gratitude. Gratitude transforms longing into trust. Each day, thank God for what is already present, even while believing for what is not yet. Gratitude doesn't diminish desire. It purifies it by keeping it rooted in abundance rather than lack. Next, keep moving in small obediences. Do what you can with what you have where you are. Waiting is not an excuse for paralysis. It is an invitation to faithfulness. Faithfulness, in the waiting, is often the very preparation for the fulfillment to come. Finally, remind yourself that timing is as much a gift as the desire itself. What comes too soon can crush you. What comes too late can discourage you. But what comes in alignment transforms you. Waiting ensures alignment. It synchronizes your desire with your readiness. In the end, waiting is not a holding cell. It is a refining fire. It is not a denial of your desire, but its purification. If you can embrace the waiting, you will discover that desire, once purified, does not consume you, it crowns you. And when the fulfillment finally comes, it will not just meet your longing, it will magnify your peace. At the beginning of the journey, the voice of peace often comes as a whisper, fleeting moments of clarity, brief encounters of resonance, synchronicities that appear like breadcrumbs on the path. These are precious, but they are not the end goal. The goal is not to live off scattered confirmations, straining to catch the next sign. The goal is communion, a steady, constant rhythm where you no longer question whether you are aligned because alignment has become the atmosphere of your life. Communion is different from confirmation. Confirmation reassures you. Communion sustains you. Confirmation speaks occasionally. Communion speaks continually. In confirmation, you wait for moments when heaven breaks into your awareness. In communion, you live with heaven as your awareness. The whispers don't disappear, but they are no longer rare interruptions. They become the daily language of your soul. Think of it like radio frequencies. At first, you may only catch the signal in bursts full of static, requiring effort to tune in. But the more you practice alignment, the more you learn to stay in range. Eventually, the signal is constant. The static is gone. The broadcast is always clear because you are always tuned. That is communion, not the occasional whisper, but the ongoing rhythm of resonance. This rhythm is cultivated through intimacy. Just as in human relationships, closeness builds familiarity. At first, you may need explicit confirmations to know what someone means. Over time, you learn their tone, their timing, their subtle cues. A single glance communicates volumes. In the same way, when you spend time in silence, gratitude, and obedience, you begin to recognize the nuances of peace. What once required obvious signs now requires only a gentle nudge. Communion also transforms how you see the world. In confirmation, signs stand out as exceptions to the ordinary. In communion, everything becomes infused with meaning. The sunrise is no longer just light, it is reminder. The conversation with a stranger is no longer random, it is alignment. The delay in traffic is no longer an annoyance, it is a moment to breathe. Communion doesn't force mystical meaning onto everything. It simply lives with such awareness of presence that nothing feels absent of it. This rhythm is not about perfection, but about consistency. You will still face noise, distraction, doubt. There will be moments when you lose signal, when static overwhelms clarity. But in communion, you don't panic. You know how to return. You breathe. You pause. You realign. And soon the rhythm is restored. Moving into this rhythm requires practice. Begin with daily anchoring moments of stillness, where you check in with your heart. Ask, where is my peace today? Let that peace guide your schedule, your conversations, your responses. Over time, you'll notice that peace is not just available in still moments, but in motion. It will accompany you into work, into conflict, into joy, into grief. That is the fruit of communion. Peace is not where you retreat, it is what you carry. Another practice is continual gratitude. Gratitude keeps the channel open. It shifts your nervous system from scarcity into abundance, from fear into trust. When you live in gratitude, you live tuned to the frequency of provision, which makes hearing the whispers of peace far easier. Gratitude is not just polite, it is magnetic. It attracts awareness of alignment. Obedience is also crucial. Every time you ignore peace, the signal dulls. Every time you honor it, the signal sharpens. Communion is built by consistency in small obediences. Over months and years, this builds into a rhythm so natural that ignoring peace feels as dissonant as ignoring breath. The beauty of communion is that it changes your posture toward life. You no longer lurch from crisis to crisis begging for signs. You walk steadily confident that guidance is always present. Fear loosens its grip because you no longer depend on circumstances for reassurance. You depend on rhythm, and rhythm cannot be taken from you. Communion also changes desire. In confirmation, you ask, am I on the right path? In communion, you live so deeply aligned that the path unfolds without the question. Your desires sync with peace. What you want and what is true become one. This is freedom, not to get everything you ask for, but to want what was already aligned with your highest self. Perhaps the most profound fruit of communion is presence. You stop waiting for life to begin. When the relationship arrives, when the success comes, when the promise is fulfilled, you live fully now because you are not waiting for signs of alignment. You are living in it. Every step is enough. Every moment is full. This is what it means to move from whispers to rhythm. Life itself becomes communion. So where do you begin? Start with stillness. Start with gratitude. Start with small obediences. Over time, the whispers will grow more familiar. The static will fade. The signs will become steady rhythm. And one day, you will look back and realize that you no longer live chasing confirmations. You live in continual communion. The voice you once strained to hear has become the song you always carry. In the end, this is the goal, not to depend on external signs, but to embody internal rhythm. To walk so aligned with peace that every breath, every choice, every step is resonance. To live in such intimacy with the Spirit that confirmation becomes the echo, but communion becomes the melody. And when you reach that place, you will find the whispers have never stopped. They were only waiting for you to listen deeply enough to hear them all the time. You have walked through the journey from noise to truth, from fleeting whispers to steady rhythm, from mere confirmation to deep communion. You have seen how words shape identity, how the heart discerns beyond logic, how obedience stretches you into miracles, and how waiting purifies your desires. But the greatest takeaway is this: the voice you are seeking is not far. It is not reserved for the holy, the chosen, or the perfect. It is already within you, speaking in peace, waiting in stillness, whispering through resonance. Your task is not to make it speak louder, it is to listen more deeply. So may you leave behind the noise of the world and enter the sanctuary of your heart. May you honor the peace that contradicts logic. May you risk obedience even when it costs reputation and comfort. May you trust the waiting as purification. And may you graduate from signs and synchronicities into unbroken communion. For in the end, life is not about chasing confirmation. It is about becoming the kind of person who walks daily with peace, who listens to the heart as the inner ear, and who lives in constant rhythm with truth. That is your inheritance. That is your calling. And that is the miracle of a life aligned.